Max and Stephen A. here with you. We have breaking news. Woj just tweeting this on the Giannis injury. There is no structural damage to Giannis Antetokounmpo's left knee after his awkward landing last night in Atlanta. Ligaments are sound, sources tell Zach Lowe, and me. Timetable to return unclear. Malika Andrews adding Giannis doubtful for Game 5 on Thursday. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Exciting match, and we've got a lot of news to get to. Stephen A. Max, how we doing, guys? Ready to go?
How y'all doing?
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good. Yes, for sure. I like this time. Let's get right into it. So, Stephen A., with Giannis doubtful, who is the most important player now in this series?
To me, it's Trae Young, and that's assuming he gets back in this series, which I anticipate he will do. He's going to be pivotal because, obviously, even without Giannis, if you got Middleton and the rest of the crew, they should be able to beat the Atlanta Hawks. What changes the game is Trae Young, and the fact that you don't have to contend with Giannis should make it even more pivotal for Trae Young to get back, because without Giannis, but with Trae Young on the court sparking this offense, he's averaging 32 points in this series on nearly 48% shooting. You get him back on the court with Giannis out, the Atlanta Hawks can take these guys. So I think that with him, it's one thing to do it without him in one game, but that's not something I see continuing as this series progresses. I think it's incredibly important that Trae Young gets back on the court, especially with Giannis hurt, so you can capitalize off of his absence.
Well, and that goes with you saying to start the series, Trae Young was the most important player. I took Giannis, but I'll tell you what, at this moment, not only would I take Middleton as more important for the Bucks even than Trae Young is for the Hawks, I take Drew Holiday as more important. Stephen A., look, Trae Young is very valuable. They won without him, not just because Lou Will was excellent, but because they were sharing the ball in his absence. But you know what, with the Bucks, Middleton plays out of his mind, they win. That goes for every game he plays out of his mind. The Bucks win. But that doesn't always happen. The reason Chris Middleton is not a perennial all-star is because he's not always great. He's sometimes great. He's usually good, sometimes great. So he's usually not an all-star, sometimes he is. He's usually not really able to be a crime partner for an MVP-type player, sometimes he is. And when he is, Stephen A., they win. And when he's not, they don't. But you know what? Now without Giannis, that really elevates Drew Holiday even more. Says, you know that about Middleton already. Drew Holiday, who can run the pick and roll, who can run an offense, an orchestrated offense, and hit big shots, he's got to step up too. My answer used to be Middleton. We knew that already. It's been Middleton. Said Middleton. Now it's Drew Holiday who must step up for this team and becomes incredibly important for the Bucks.
Well, I'm certainly not proclaiming that Middleton and Drew Holiday's responsibilities and culpabilities don't elevate. Without Giannis, of course it does. I'm simply saying that one of them can give you something. And as the team is constructed, they can still beat the Atlanta Hawks. When I look at the Atlanta Hawks, regardless of what transpired in Game 4, to me it comes down to Trae Young getting back on the court and spearheading this offense. If he's able to do that, particularly creating shots for his teammates, and Lou Williams maintains his level of aggression, Bogdanovich didn't seem hampered by that knee injury in Game 4 as well. I think those kind of things propelled them to win this series if Trae Young is on the court and Giannis is not. I think Milwaukee is a better team even without Giannis if those dudes do their job. With Trae Young, I'm saying if you're the Atlanta Hawks, I don't think you have a chance in this series. That's the only reason I name him as more pivotal, because they don't have a chance without Trae Young. Trae Young, to me, getting back on the court is their chance to win this series.
Well, look, injury has decided this whole playoff so far. Yeah. From LeBron and AD to KD and to Kyrie and James Harden and on and on. It seems like every series. I mean, even just think about this. No Trae Young, no Giannis. Guys are falling like flies. But the point was supposed to be that Giannis had a better crew. Giannis and Trae Young, the two best players. But you know who the best player after that is? Middleton. You know who the best player after that is? Drew Holiday. Stephen A., that hasn't always been the case. That's what I'm saying. It has not always been the case.
Hold on.
When it is the case, they win.
I'm confused. You're saying Drew Holiday and Middleton are the best players without Giannis compared to who? The rest of their teammates, or does that include Trae Young?
Off. I'm saying take Trae Young and take Giannis off their teams, right?
Okay.
The reason heading into this series, people like Milwaukee, is because when you looked at the third best player in the series after Giannis and Trae Young, that's Middleton. Who's the fourth best player? Drew Holiday. They haven't always been that. Lou Williams was last time out. Like, they haven't always been. Cam Reddish is playing. Middleton's allowing himself to get shut down by Cam Reddish off an injury. After the way he dropped 38 the night before, they can't do that. They're inconsistent, Stephen A. They got to step up.
Yeah, they're inconsistent. They got to step up. But they ain't more important than the arrival of Trae Young. If Trae Young doesn't come back, they're not winning the series.
Yeah.
I think actually the Bucks still have chances. The Hawks still have chances based on what I just saw with Lou Will.
Yeah, Vegas and BPI both have the Bucks still winning this series. Guys, let's keep it moving, though. We have a Game 6 tonight right here on ESPN, a finals berth on the line. The Suns missing a huge opportunity to close out the series. Game 5 Monday in Phoenix. They get another shot to punch their ticket to the finals tonight in L.A. Speaking of L.A., we know the Clippers not scared with their back against the wall, being down 0-2 in their last 2 series. They'll look to push it to a Game 7 back in Phoenix without their best player, Kawhi Leonard. Zubac, questionable. Max, who has the most on the line tonight?
Oh, by far, Chris Paul. By far. I'll leave Paul George or whoever else to you, Stephen A. I think some guys can add to their legacy, right? Some guys can improve. Some guys, but who has not only the most to gain, but also the most to lose? It's Chris Paul. Stephen A., you had him right there. You had him on Stephen A.'s list, right? Top 5 all-time point guard if he wins the chip this year, but he's got to win the championship to be top 5, and maybe with a bullet. Maybe, in the top 5 and heading in the right direction, going up that list. But if he loses, Stephen A. Smith, if this dude how many teams can he be on that collapse in the playoffs? As much as we talk about point guard and how Chris Paul is the perfect point guard and everything, maybe we're talking about the previous era where he could play at a slower pace and monopolize the ball and do all the things that we grew up thinking a point guard should do. But maybe the game has changed because campaigns in the game, they're playing at a faster pace. They did better. Stephen A., think about this. This team built the lead without Chris Paul. Now he comes back and they could collapse again? Can you imagine if this series goes to a Game 7? What's on the line for Chris Paul? He has the most to gain historically right now, everything, and the most to lose if his team collapses. The answer is Chris Paul.
Well, listen, I don't blame you for that synopsis because I get where you're coming from, particularly when you're feeding off of what we witnessed in Game 5. In Game 5, you have to get DeAndre Ayton the ball. You can't have DeAndre Ayton on the floor for 36 minutes and have him take less shots in 26 extra minutes of play than DeMarcus Cousins received. DeMarcus Cousins took 12 shots in 11 minutes. DeAndre Ayton took 9 shots in 36 minutes. That's on Chris Paul. You got to get DeAndre Ayton involved. I get that. But I would still tell you Paul George. And the reason why I tell you Paul George is because Paul George has been taking some heat. And Paul George, because of what transpired in Game 7 last year, what transpired in Game 2 when he missed those 2 free throws with 8.2 seconds left at the line and he missed both of them. And when you look at that and then you juxtapose that to his performance in Game 5, where he dropped 41 and hit 15 to 20 shots after shooting 5 of 20 the game before, and you see the way that he performs, now you've got an opportunity to push this to a Game 7. And if you wet the bed and don't show up tonight and play small, and the Phoenix Suns advance to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1993, and Chris Paul is in his first NBA Finals, ever, and you're Paul George and you don't close the deal and you don't push this to a Game 7, there's a lot of heat that he's going to take too. Because here's the reality from a philosophical perspective, Max. Here's where you and I religiously disagree. Chris Paul is one of the great point guards to have ever played this game. But when you are a relatively miniature guard, they don't look at you and say, you take us to the promised land. The exception would have been in Isaiah Thomas when you had Joe Dumars, Vinny the Microwave Johnson coming off the bench,
deep team.
the bad boys and stuff like that. But Allen Iverson, everybody looked at him and said, even though he was the answer, he's the 6-foot guard out of Georgetown. There's so much he's going to do. You look at other guards throughout history that have been relatively small. You look at the great Kevin Johnson that played with Barkley in Phoenix when they went to the finals and was a scoring machine. In the end, when you're relatively miniature in size as a guard, you're not held to the level of accountability a 6'7", 6'8" dude like Paul George is held to.
I'll factor that into the consideration. I think that's right, that it's harder for the shorter players. That's true. But how many times can you collapse in the playoffs? And how many excuses can you make? Well, that's a Doc Rivers thing. That was on a Doc Rivers team. Well, he got hurt this year. But this year, Stephen A., everyone else is hurt. You'd be right if they were playing worse without him and then better with him. They were playing better with his backup, worse with him, and it's because the tempo slows down. He monopolizes the ball. It's because he wasn't getting the ball to Ayton Wright. But not only that, Stephen A., Kawhi is not playing for the other team. He is in a season right now. He's in a season right now where the other superstars are all hurt. You know the one team that's all together? The Suns. So when you bring up the valid point, look, this dude's 6 feet tall. This is a game of giants. But he's got Booker, and he's got Payne, and he's got Johnson, Cam Johnson, and everybody, Bridges, and Ayton, and everybody.
Pause. There's some facts that need to be brought out before you continue with that point. Number one, Chris Paul was playing sensational before COVID protocols took him out of games 1 and 2.
Facts, as the kids say.
Game 2, after Cameron Payne played lights out in those 37 minutes without a single turnover, 29 points and 9 assists, he gets hurt 4 minutes into game 3. Mm-hmm. When he got hurt, Devin Booker got his nose broke, had to wear the mask, and struggled miserably over a stretch of 3 games from the field shooting the basketball. All of those things are things that you're going to get taken into consideration if it's CP3. Now, again, nobody's talking about letting him off the hook. Nobody's talking about how he's not going to receive any criticism based on the pure questions that you highlighted. But I'm saying there's an answer to all of those questions that's going to at least make you pause. When you look at Paul George, he was brought to L.A. specifically to be that dude if Kawhi couldn't be for any reason.
To be second banana, and I'll say this. Paul George already got the rap as being not as good as he normally is in the playoffs.
I think he's great.
He's better in the playoffs. He declines. He's already started to change that around.
Yes,
these playoffs. He has evidence that says you can bring up my failures, but you got to bring up my successes too. So he does have something to gain, but not as much to lose. Chris Paul has so much to gain and so much to lose. Because, Stephen A., you can bring up all the points and explanations for why certain things happen, but at a certain point, you can't have a whole career of that. And especially not in a year where everyone else is hurt and your team is healthy. You got the whole crew there. Through deep
But I just told you they're not. That's my point.
Hold up. But he's healthy. Book is playing. Ayton's playing. Kawhi's not playing.
No. Booker had his nose broke and spent 3 games struggling. Cameron Payne twisted his ankle, and after game 2, we hadn't really seen him since that time. I was wondering whether or not he was still hurt. I'm still waiting for an answer to that. I was told by the Suns this dude will be ready. Okay? Mm-hmm. But clearly he hasn't been himself. All I'm trying to say to you is...
Kawhi not playing.
Say what?
Kawhi not playing is different. That's the best player on that team, a 2-time Finals MVP.
I do believe we all know that Kawhi Leonard's not playing. That's not the point. The point is the level of accountability that's going to be aimed in Chris Paul's direction. I'm saying he's going to get some criticism, and he's going to deserve it if they fall apart. But you're going to have people that are going to bring up those elements because you keep saying they're healthy, and they're saying they're not.
All right, I want to stay with this game. I want to focus on another player, Stephen A., and it's a bit of a controversial question here, but if the Clippers pull off this Herculean task and manage to win the championship without Kawhi Leonard, should they move on from him?
Yes. I said that on SportsCenter the other day. That's what created what, if you want to call it a brouhaha or whatever is appropriate. I don't care if they win it without him, definitely. If they win it with him, if he ends up coming back and they win it with him, they should strongly consider it. Let me make sure that I'm very clear with what I'm about to say, Max Kellerman. Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player on the planet when healthy. On both ends of the floor with what he brings to the table. He is a superstar caliber talent basketball player. He does nothing for you marketing-wise, promotionally speaking, okay? He does nothing to galvanize, motivate, or lead. All he does is do his job. He practices when he wants. He plays when he wants, okay? And when he does play, he's elite, no question about it. I'm saying if you need him to win the chip, Max, you grab him. If you're talking about building a culture, then that's different. If the Clippers were to win this year, with or without him, you've achieved the goal. And once you achieve that, Then you think about culture building. Without the championship, Max, of course you bring them because it still escapes you, and you want to win a championship. But if you luck up and you capture a championship with Paul George locked up, with you having the ability to retain Reggie Jackson, with a Terrence Mann on the come up, the Patrick Beverleys and those boys still in play. If you win the championship with or without Kawhi, and you're talking about long term from a cultural perspective, I don't believe that helps you.
Well,
you keep him if you want a mercenary to come in there and deliver you a championship for a year. That's what you keep him for.
Well, look,
you don't keep him long term with all the load management issues and everything that comes with it. That's why I said that.
The whole NBA is about getting a guy like Kawhi, meaning a 5-star player. There aren't that many of those dudes. You know, if you got one, you keep him. What did Dr. Jerry Buss, the late great owner of the Los Angeles Lakers, greatest owners by far in the history of American team sports, when Kobe wanted to trade? He said, Kobe, you're a 5-carat diamond. I'm not trading you for 5 1-carat diamonds. The NBA, you never break a dollar into 4 quarters. Always go 4 quarters into a dollar. And Kawhi is a dollar bill. If you have him, keep him. And Kawhi Leonard, whatever culture, whatever else, I'll flip it around for you. Let's say the Clippers get to the finals and Kawhi plays in the finals and wins finals MVP. You know what that'll show? That'll show that all the load management, he has an injury-prone body, Stephen A. Some dudes are like that. Some dudes just physically aren't put together like others. They take care of themselves. They just get hurt.
Just bring up injury.
But the point is, his load management, being careful with Kawhi, will have worked for the 3rd time, right? He'll be a 3-time finals MVP if he does it with 3 different teams, the second guy 1 year after LeBron did it. I'm just saying, you may have valid criticism of Kawhi, but to take the good and the bad, there aren't that many dudes like him. If you got him, you got to be nuts to let him go.
Well, first of all, let's take a couple of things into consideration. My caveat was, if you haven't won, you keep him. But if you've won the championship, you've already accomplished your goal, and now it's about culture building. And so what I'm saying to you is, when you think about Philadelphia and how much you loved the process, okay, you're talking about building for a better future, for a bigger future, and what have you. I'm looking at a guy like Kawhi Leonard, and I'm saying superstar without question, superstar talent. Practices when he wants, plays when he wants, comes and goes as he pleases, etc., etc. I'm saying if you win a championship, then you're going to invest in that long term. You're going to invest with the durability questions. You're going to invest with the sporadic availability questions. I'm saying to you, if it were me, and again, there's nothing to discuss if they don't win the chip, because I need him to win the chip. But once he delivers that for me, if I could sit up there and get some value for him and keep the rest of my team intact, when I'm talking about the culture that I want to establish for my franchise, if I already have a championship,
what about a second chip?
That's what
if you want a second ring,
Thank
Stephen
you,
A?
Molly. Thank you. Right. If you got one, go get another. And by the way, even if it's not back-to-back, what Kawhi has shown throughout his career, every 3 or 4 years he's going to be finals MVP. You might get another, even if it's not immediate, you might get another one with
when
him.
other people are injured and you don't have to go against the LeBrons of the world, sure.
All right, he got it.
Sure.
I mean, someone's going to do that this year.
Someone's
going to win this year because of injury.
Or Jamal Murray, sure.
Injury bug hit, guys. Understatement of the year. Let's keep it rolling. Injuries seem to be a calling card of this year's NBA playoffs. Unfortunately, 9 different All-Stars have missed time this postseason with injuries, some attributing it to a shorter than usual offseason coming out of the bubble in a new edition of a play-in round to begin the playoffs. LeBron had this to say in part on Twitter regarding load management earlier this month. They all didn't want to listen to me at the start of the season. I knew exactly what would happen. I only wanted to protect the well-being of the players. These injuries isn't just part of the game. 8, possibly 9 All-Stars have missed playoff games, most in league history. This is the best time of the year for our league and fans, but missing a ton of our favorite players. 4-time NBA champion Shaquille O'Neal recently had this in response. When you're living in a world where 40 million people have been laid off and you're making 200 million, you won't get any complaining from me. I'd play back to back to back to back. I'm not knocking what anybody said, but me personally, I don't complain. I don't make excuses because real people are working their tail off. And all we got to do is train 2 hours a day and then play a game for 2 hours at night and make a whole lot of money. So my thought process, a little bit different. Well then, Max, Do NBA players complain too much? Does Shaq have a point here?
No. Well, does Shaq have a point? Let me just say, before I don't want Stephen A., the pandemic was for real. A lot of people lost their lives.
Absolutely.
A lot of people were suffering, and you have to acknowledge that, so I get the sentiment. I need to start out by saying, Shaq, I understand the sentiment, right? But no, the NBA players are not complaining too much. Like, first of all, Shaq told on himself a little, Stephen A. All you got to do is show up and train for 2 hours and then play 2 hours. And that's not what LeBron and the elite of the elite are doing. Sometimes that's why Shaq, who said, hey, I get hurt on company time, I'll rehab on company time. That's sometimes why Kobe got mad at Shaq, right? Like, Shaq was a physical freak who could get away with doing that sometimes, but most of these other guys who are the elite of the elite, not. Stephen A., how can you deny when it's not just all-stars, we could throw it out, all-stars, series were decided by these injuries. And LeBron is right. LeBron called the shot ahead of time. You can't turn around after the dude said, this is what's going to happen, then it happens, and then say, don't complain. Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Stephen A., they were humiliating Milwaukee until Kyrie went down, and then Harden was never really Harden. That wasn't just, those were beatings, like humiliation beatings. Obviously, Milwaukee was no match for them. AD goes down. The Lakers don't advance. Look at every series. You talk about Jamal Murray, now Kawhi Leonard, Donovan Mitchell. The whole playoffs has been decided by injury, and LeBron warned against it. So, Stephen A., I get Shaq's sentiment, and it's a good one. Real people are really suffering, and these are people who are living different kinds of lives. But to say that like LeBron's complaining when he predicted it and it happened, he had a reason for saying what he said.
Well, that doesn't mean the reason vibes with what you're proclaiming. And the fact of the matter is LeBron is incredibly wrong. And I agree with Shaq. A lot of these players complain too damn much. And you wonder, they walk around with this, acerbic attitude, a bit truculent with people and all this stuff. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Who bothered you? And it's not just about these games, and it's not just about play after bubble play. It's everything. DeMarcus Cousins was on the air talking about people need to give Paul George his flowers. Mm-hmm. When has Paul George not received his flowers? That was when Game 7 happened last year. Before then, we weren't dogging Paul George. All right, he's one of the best people you'll ever meet. We know he can ball. We just pointed out how they got sent home after giving up a 3-1 lead. And then he missed the 2 free throws in Game 2. We can't even analyze basketball anymore without dudes being caught up in their feeling. You saw me on the air months ago, and I said I didn't care about a 35, 21, and 14 performance from Russell Westbrook. Why did I say that? Because I know the brother is a walking triple-double. He won a league MVP. He's done it for years now. He's going into the Hall of Fame. We've seen that. Can I see you play after 2 weeks into the playoffs? That's all I said. This is the point. But you would have thought that people would talk about their mamas or their family members or something, because we're analyzing and dissecting the game of basketball. And who's the ringleader with that stuff? It's LeBron. Because LeBron, he can drop 50, he can drop 60. And we all know we love and respect the hell out of this phenomenal role model that is LeBron James. But let's call a spade here. He can drop 50 or 60. You can praise him till the cows come home. He got a big glowing smile on his face, and he'll sit there and talk with the media for hours. But let him have a bad game, and you point that out. Well, I'm just trying to be a role model to the kids out there, and I'm a champion in life. I came from Akron. What the hell does that have to do with the fact that you struggled in this game? This is what they do, and they do this now more than ever. And then you take into account bubble play. Let me dissect this for you, Max Kellerman. Let me remind you, because you and I were on the air every day. We ain't get no games off. You understand what I'm saying? They stopped play March 11th. They were supposed to be off a month. Instead, they have 4.5 months off. A vast majority of them only played 6 weeks. And then they come back and they play 6 weeks to 2 months. And then they come back after 3 months off and they play in December. How much time do you want off? Of course, LeBron pointing out complaints. What complaints? You ain't been playing. He's played. He might have a complaint. But to say the rest of the league has a point? What the hell were you doing in your off time to stay in shape? You are a professional. This ain't the 50s and 60s. You don't need a second job to supplement your income. You making this money. All you got to do is take care of your body. What's the problem?
Those are valid points. Especially during the pandemic, people were counted themselves lucky when they had a job to go to. Forget about days off. Hey, I still have a job to go to. That's great. So I understand, and that was Shaq's broader point. I understand where you're saying, look, people are really suffering for real, not just, hey, we have a condensed schedule. What I'm saying is the specific thing LeBron was complaining about here was you're making us play too many games and what's going too close together, and what's going to happen at this level is injury. And when he calls that, and then the whole playoffs, all the best players are hurt, that's not the time to be like LeBron complains too much. That's the time to be like, he was right.
But
He was right.
Giannis injuries last night, Kyrie's injury in Milwaukee, those weren't injuries that happened as a matter of conditioning. You twisted your damn ankle. You hyperextended your knee.
You can argue both things are true. Both Shaq and both LeBron are right here.
Okay.
Molly making the...
We can. You're right, Molly, we can. But I don't choose to.
But you're not
I'm
going to.
take a side.
Stephen A., who wins tonight? Tell me. Who you got?
I couldn't hear you, Molly. I'm sorry.
Clippers.
Producer was in my ear.
Max out the Clippers. We'll be back here same time tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Have a fabulous night.
Honest, the NBA postseason has been brutal and takes another victim last night. Giannis, with his team down 10 in the third quarter right here, lands awkwardly after contesting an alley-oop, immediately crumples to the ground. He walks off. He was clearly hampered. New today, imaging showed no structural damage per Woj and Zach Lowe on that hyperextended knee. He's listed as doubtful. As for a timeline, just over 24 hours away. We will get to that in just a second. In terms of the Bucks without Giannis, well, it's not good. I mean, it would be a big impact on the Bucks' title chances, right? If you were to miss the rest of the postseason, it would drop the Bucks' chances of winning the East from 80 to 66%. They'd still be the favorite, though. As far as winning it all, the Bucks' chances drop from 48 to 23%. Within the hour, his head coach, Mike Budenholzer, on Giannis.
Definitely do not trust the coach. Whatever the release said is what it is. Doubtful. At some point, you got to pull the trigger and make a decision, and we'll probably do that, and then we'll probably tell you we don't know who we're playing and starting and all that, and then a tip off or whenever you guys will get it, and it's kind of the normal routine. We should have our medical director come and speak to you. You guys got the coach to talk to you. So I think it'd just be best to leave it at he's questionable, and Giannis is going to do everything he can to be available.
The idea we're talking about potential availability after what we witnessed last night is sort of a miracle. Adrian Wojnarowski is joining us now. In reporting, Woj, that there was no structural damage to Giannis's knee, what else did you find out about the injury?
Well, certainly a tremendous sigh of relief for that Milwaukee organization. But now, I think Giannis Antetokounmpo, with this series tied 2-2, it's going to be his capacity to be able to come back from this. It is unlikely that he's out there in Game 5 for the Bucks. He has shown in his career to have a tremendous capacity to recover, but certainly he's in a race against the clock here with this series now tied 2-2 going back to Milwaukee. But Giannis Antetokounmpo did avoid a major knee injury.
It's interesting because on this very show just yesterday, we thought the most significant injury would be that of Trae Young. We announced here on the show he would be sitting out Game 4 with that bone bruise that was suffered here in Game 3 after stepping on the ref's knee. Here is his head coach, Nate McMillan, today with Trae still uncertain for Game 5 tomorrow.
We don't have two different plans. You have to adapt. And I think during the course of an NBA game, you're constantly adapting to situations that you can't really plan for. Trae, he's trying to give it a go, and 40 minutes before the game, he can't. So, okay, we got to adjust to him being out.
With that being said, Woj, what's the level of optimism inside the Hawks organization he'd be able to give it a go tomorrow?
There is not great optimism that he will be able to play in Game 5, but he's working toward it today. He continues, to rehab that foot, do everything he can to improve that range of motion, try to subdue, what's been a really painful injury. And I think he's going to take this up to Game 5 like he did in Game 4 and see if there's any possible way he can play for the Hawks. Certainly, perhaps it buys him a little time that Atlanta was able to tie this series up 2-2, but I think we'll know closer to game time tomorrow about Trae Young's availability.
Absolutely. It's a kind of an oversimplification, Woj, to just say next man up, but the Hawks did a great job in Trae's absence. We'll see if he'll be a go and if Giannis will be a go for Game 5. Woj reporting here on the Eastern Conference Finals.
Suns Clippers, they meet in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals tonight, 9 Eastern on ESPN. Another series-clinching chance for the Suns as they're seeking their third NBA Finals appearance in franchise history. Phoenix has never won an NBA championship. How about this? Tonight will be the 290th playoff game in franchise history. So on the other side, Ty Lue's been here. He's been tremendous with his back against the wall. Lue has a 10-2 game record when facing elimination, the best record among head coaches to face elimination at least 8 times. But the Suns have also been very good in this spot. Phoenix has clinched the first 2 rounds this postseason on the road. A win tonight would tie their longest such streak in franchise playoff history. NBA reporter Dave McMenamin joining us now live from Los Angeles. And Dave, how would you describe the pressure around Chris Paul and the Suns as they look to close this series tonight against the Clippers on the road?
Kevin, it all comes down to compartmentalization. You don't think about the fact that you're playing a Clippers team that came back from down 0-2 in the first round, came back from down 0-2 in the second round, and now are mounting a comeback after they fell down 3-1. And you also don't think about what's happened historically in Chris Paul's career when he's gotten to this point and failed to reach the final stage. You just think about execution. Monty Williams says the team needs to play with force. They need to have a better competitive edge and come down and guard the ball better than they did in the first quarter of Game 5 where they fell down 15. Chris Paul says it's not just starting the game the right way, but it's ending quarters the right way. If you recall, in Game 5, they cut the lead down to 4 in the first quarter, and it went back up. They cut the lead, they actually took the lead briefly in the third quarter, went back up to 13 by the start of the fourth, and in the fourth, we saw them cut it to 4 about halfway through, and then obviously the Clippers were able to run away with it. So it's just about staying in the moment, staying focused possession by possession. Don't think about the grandiose nature of what could occur if they do lose.
All right, we haven't seen really the fast-paced style for the Suns on offense that we saw at the start of the series. We'll see if that changes tonight with CP3 and Devin Booker. Dave McMenamin getting us ready for Game 6 outside L.A.
Prop bets on Game 6 of the Western Conference Final, which is tonight. Our friends at Caesars William Hill put this together. Phoenix, a 1-point road favorite with the total set at 214.5. And after scoring 41 points in Game 5, Paul George's points prop for tonight is set at 30.5 as we go live to LA, where we find PTI's Michael Wilbon joining us now. Mike, it feels like the Clippers are like Jason or Freddy in the horror movies. Every time you think you get away, they're just right there. They're right there on your tail.
Good analogy.
Right?
Good analogy.
But do you think that they can do it again and stage another comeback with Paul George?
Yeah, I do, Elle. And I don't know. It's so difficult to do it 3 times, right? 3 games in a row. But this is only the second game. They're at home, and everybody keeps saying, well, who's the pressure on? The pressure is on the team that could go home for the season. The pressure is on the Clippers. Do I think right now that they are up for that challenge and that Paul George, I don't get into gambling, Elle, but I heard that 30.5 points. 30.5 points ain't going to get it. Paul George is going to have most likely a bigger game, a bigger output than that. But, yeah, I think that the Clippers are up for this, and I think back-to-back wins to stave off elimination and going home for the season, I think that's within their power.
And they certainly have the head coach that's used to doing it too. Well documented that Ty Lue excels in these exact situations. Let's go to the East now. We saw the Hawks get a win last night without Trae Young, and now the Bucks may be without Giannis. What would you say is your level of confidence that the Bucks can still win this without him? Because, by the way, Michael Wilbon, Vegas still thinks they will.
Elle, I don't have any confidence in the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis.
Oh.
I mean, are people not paying attention to the previous 2 years? I mean, how they've gone out of the playoffs, and certainly 2 years ago, when they were a favorite up 2-0 in that conference final series against Toronto, up 2-0 and lost Game 3 in overtime. At least one overtime. I was there. I don't remember how many overtimes it is now. But, no, I don't have that faith in the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, they have such weird tendencies, and we can look at those tendencies over the 3 postseasons. If you tell me that Trae Young is going to be able to return, even if it's in games 6 and 7, even if, he can't play in game 5, I'm one of the few people that could see Atlanta winning this series because and especially without Giannis. I mean, do I believe that, with Middleton and crew, that Milwaukee ought to have enough? Drew Holiday, they ought to have enough? Ought to? And I keep hearing people around the league in the industry say that Milwaukee ought to have enough to win without Giannis. I'm not buying that. Everything they do is off Giannis. Middleton still has a lot of up and down games. Drew Holiday, up and down games. I don't know what Budenholzer is going to do with substitutions and pattern of play. And a guy like Bobby Portis, he can help you in one series. They don't put him on the court for a minute for 3 games. I don't have any faith in Milwaukee, even though would I concede they're probably the better team on paper? Yeah. But they're playing this on a hardwood, and I'm not willing to just concede this series to Milwaukee if Giannis is not going to be out there. It's so sad what has happened in the playoffs, El, as you know. Just so many injuries, and every series, it seems, is affected by it. And I hope that both Trae Young and Giannis can play. But if Giannis is not out there, I'm not going to just hand this to Milwaukee.
It's a little bit like the war of attrition, if you will. And I hate to use this cliche for you, Michael Wilbon. The Bucks have better players, but it looks like the Hawks are a better team, right? Michael Wilbon,
yes,
right?
Yes,
Joining us here on SportsCenter. You'll see more of Michael Wilbon on SportsCenter with Stephen A., which is coming up at the top of the hour, 7 Eastern, right here on ESPN. Thank you, Mike.
Still ahead, El. Here's Stephen A. Smith's take on the CP3 versus Paul George deciding factors in tonight's elimination game and the lasting impact of key injuries. Reminding you, we've got Game 6, an elimination game for Terrence Mann, as well as the Clippers as they host the Suns tonight. Western Conference Finals, just 4 points. The last time we saw him on the court in 26 minutes. And, of course, they will not have Kawhi Leonard as that continues dealing with a sprained knee. He's been out this entire series. Now, if Giannis were to miss Game 5, he would be the 10th All-Star who has missed a playoff game this postseason. This is ridiculous, right?
Look.
Entering the night, 9 different All-Stars have missed a playoff game, the most in a single postseason in NBA history. And that doesn't even include your boy, Trae Young.
Yeah, because he wasn't technically an All-Star.
Should be. Who missed Game 4 with a foot injury. So no star power. It's just survival of the fittest before his show at the top of the hour. The man never stops working. Stephen A. Smith joining us now on SportsCenter. Stephen A., how will the rash of all-star injuries in the playoffs factor into how we'll view this NBA championship?
Well, it'll be tainted. There's no question about that. If Kawhi Leonard isn't playing, if Chris Paul somehow were to go down, or Devin Booker, Giannis being down, if he doesn't come back, Trae being down, if he doesn't come back, you're going to frown upon that. Look at how we look at the Milwaukee Bucks. We're talking about them going to the NBA Finals, but who in their right mind believes they'd be sitting in this position if Kyrie Irving, the significance of a championship in their minds, but in the viewing public, of course, we're going to remember that.
Okay, you're in L.A. for tonight's Game 6. What's going to be the deciding factor in your mind between the Suns and the Clippers?
Well, I think number one is going to be Paul George and how much help he gets, whether it's from Reggie Jackson or Marcus Morris again. That's number one. And number two, if you're the Phoenix Suns, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, you got to shoot with some degree of more accuracy. But the bigger point is this. How is DeAndre Ayton not getting the ball? I understand the Clippers threw a zone at you to begin the game, but DeAndre Ayton played 36 minutes and took 9 shots. DeMarcus Cousins played 11 minutes and took 12 shots. I mean, let's think about that for a second here. He plays 26 less minutes, and the dude gets 3 more shots than DeAndre Ayton. That's on Chris Paul and Devin Booker. You got to make sure you feed this man. He came into the game shooting 71% from the field. That means he makes almost 3 times, almost 3 shots for every 4 he takes. You have to get him the basketball.
All right, we're going to keep an eye on the big man tonight. SportsCenter with Stephen A. Smith coming your way. Top of the hour, live, right before NBA Countdown, which takes us to Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals. Appreciate you, Stephen A.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of which, Kevin, we're not done with that topic. The countdown continues to Game 6. So will Chris Paul send the Suns to the finals, or will PG-13 force a Game 7? Tim Legler.
For Paul George, who's coming off that 41-point performance, going 15 for 20 from the field in LA's Game 5 win in Phoenix, keeping the Clippers' hopes alive. And here we are, Game 6, Staples Center. The Los Angeles Clippers looking to push this to a Game 7. They'll need another spectacular performance from Paul George. Make no mistake about that. But they'll also need Reggie Jackson to show up. They'll also need Marcus Morris to show up. They might even need Marcus Cousins to show up. And oh, by the way, Patrick Beverly and Terrence Mann keep playing that defense. If you're the Phoenix Suns, an entirely different scenario altogether. You got CP3. He's been struggling with his shooting from the field. You got Devin Booker. He's been struggling with his shooting from the field. Not only do they need to become better marksmen, But they also need to get the ball to DeAndre Ayton, who's shooting 70% from the field in the series, but somehow, some way, even with that reality, in Game 5, he only took 9 shots, having played 26 more minutes than DeMarcus Cousins, who took 12 shots. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And if the Phoenix Suns are to avoid a Game 7 and advance to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1993, it'd be a good thing for them to get that man to basketball. For more on tonight's game, we'll send it to Om Youngmisuk with the Clippers.
Stephen A., this season the Clippers have played their best when the odds are against them. Ty Lue is 10-2 when facing elimination and 3-0 this postseason. Paul George said Lue did not scrap the game plan when the Clippers fell behind 3-1 in this series. He just made some minor adjustments and gave the players the freedom to figure it out. George says the Clippers have taken on Lue's calm and confident demeanor. And if the Clippers can force a Game 7, Lue is 12-1 with a chance to clinch a series. With a report on the Suns, here's Dave McMenamin.
Thanks, Ohm. Well, focus is the word of the day for Phoenix, and controlling that focus to stay locked in on executing the things that cost the Suns in Game 5, namely playing better defense and with a sense of desperation. Suns reserve Torrey Craig told me this morning they know the task at hand, they know what's at stake, and he pointed out that even though the Suns might not have made the finals since 1993, this Suns team is very familiar with tonight's challenge. They closed out Game 6 on the road at Staples Center in the first round against the Lakers just less than a month ago. Tonight, they just have to do the same thing against the Clippers.
We now bring in Hall of Famer Mike Wilbon, as well as our NBA champion Kendrick Perkins. Wilbon, I'll go to you first here. Paul George, Chris Paul. Who's got the most pressure tonight?
Paul George, because they can go home. I mean, Chris Paul's got another day to live and fight, right, no matter what happens tonight. But Paul George didn't have that. And the question is for Paul George, I know in their camp, in their locker room, their coaches, their teammates, they're saying all we got to win is one. And that's true. And then another. But it's on Paul George. And by the way, Paul George has answered this in a way that goes against the narrative about him for the past few seasons.
Okay.
All right. And when you look at the game that he just played in Phoenix, Stephen A., I mean, he certainly seems up to it again. Can he duplicate it? He needs to do. I'm not saying he has to score 40, but he's going to have an all-around terrific game, rebounding, playmaking, and scoring, and more so than Chris Paul, whose pressure day will come if it's not tonight.
Perk, let's take it to another level. Just the series overall. Who's got the most pressure on them right now between these two guys, CP3 or Paul George?
Well, it's CP3. I feel like Paul George and the Clippers are playing with house money right now. They're missing Kawhi Leonard, Serge Ibaka, Zubac. That's 3 of their main guys. CP3, on the other hand, being up 3-1, having a fully healthy roster, he has to go out there and deliver. It's on him to go out there and handle his business to get this win on this series. We know that he blew a 3-1 lead in the past. Now is his opportunity to finally make an appearance to the finals. And I think this is going to be either a hit on his legacy, positive or negative. So it's on CP3. The pressure is on him. You do not want to go to a Game 7. Anything could happen in a Game 7. Forget the series. Tonight, the pressure is on Chris Paul.
I feel you on that. I got to transition to DeAndre Ayton with both of you guys, though, because I don't understand for the life of me. He came into Game 5, shooting about 70% from the field. Right now, he's shooting about 67% from the field. Only took 9 shots in 36 minutes in Game 5. Now, I know that Ty Lue for the Clippers threw a zone on them early on, and that disrupted them or what have you. But considering the cerebral player that Chris Paul has always been, I don't understand for the life of me how DeAndre Ayton didn't get the ball more, Mike Wilbon.
I do. The stage was big in Phoenix in Game 5. They thought everybody was talking about Suns in 5. And DeAndre Ayton is not the most assertive fellow yet.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to see a much different guy in 2 or 3 seasons, Stephen A. I know you and I have been talking about this and with Perk the whole series. The stage was big, and he might have shied away a little bit. I don't expect to see that tonight.
Evidence.
Sure.
You saw evidence of him shying away. I didn't see that.
First of all, he fumbled about 5 different passes and balls out of bounds.
That is true.
Secondly, there were times when Chris Paul hit him, and he did not turn around and take that shot. You could see in the huddle.
Okay.
Like it was early in the season when they were screaming at DeAndre,
right.
Shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. Remember, Stephen A., this is his first time with the lights this bright. All right, he's going to get better. I don't expect him to be. You expect him to be a finished product already?
Not a finished
He ain't
product.
gonna be Tim Duncan at this point.
But if you were playing well in the conference semifinal in the first round, and then the semifinals, and for the first few games in the Western Conference
Game
Finals,
5 ain't
all of a
different?
sudden Game 5 arrives.
Game 5's not different.
It's a little.
You got a
different, but
chance to
still.
go to the finals. It's not
But
different.
you up 3-1. You ain't down 3-1.
I could expect Chris Paul to process all that. Maybe even Devin Booker. Not DeAndre Ayton. Not at this point. Okay, Perkins been in this situation. Maybe he disagrees completely.
All right. Perk, do you agree or disagree with what Wilbon just said?
Well, I kind of agree with Wilbon, but here's my thing with DeAndre Ayton. And like those old people used to say, a closed mouth don't get fed. At the end of the day, you got to want the ball. You got to establish your presence in the paint. Right now, Zubac is out. They started small against you. You had 9 offensive rebounds in Game 4. If they're not feeding you the ball, go get it off the glass. It's a lot of missed shots that's coming off the rim. Go impose your will in the paint. Establish your identity. Outrun DeMarcus Cousins when he get on the court. Use your quickness. Put him in pick and rolls. Be that lob threat at the basket. Again, it's on CP3 and Devin Booker to feed him the ball, but it's also on DeAndre Ayton to establish himself in that paint and demand attention, demand the rock. Go to the offensive glass.
That was a very astute critique on the part of Kendrick Perkins right there.
Totally.
If you any kind of brother, you should be able to outrun DeMarcus Cousins, but especially if you're from the Bahamas. I mean, you should know how to outrun DeMarcus Cousins.
Back in his Indiana days, trying to keep the Clippers season alive. No Kawhi in action. Tim Legler joining us as we get ready for this game. So on Monday, you said the Clippers needed to light up the three-point line to extend the series, and they did that. They hit 10 triples in Game 5. What did the Clippers need to do tonight to force a Game 7 and go back to Phoenix?
I think they've got to be prepared for Chris Paul. I think that's what this comes down to. This is Chris Paul's moment. And he knows since he came back from this injury, he has not been very good the last 2 games. So you know he's going to put more pressure on himself to come out and stabilize his team. They're counting on him to not just be out there and be a floor leader. They want Chris Paul to go out there and have a big scoring night. So that means the Clippers have to make sure he does not get off early. If I'm Tyronn Lue, that's what I'm focusing on. We have to make sure he does not come off those high ball screens and get into that comfort zone in the mid-range area to floor. You know he's one of the best mid-range players this league has ever seen. That's his bread and butter shot. If he gets a few of those to go early in the game, he could be a different player for the night because he has not been able to find his rhythm. So for me, that's at the absolute top of the whiteboard for the Clippers. Chris Paul has to be a priority. This is his moment, his time. He's going to try to put this team on his back.
No doubt it feels like it's the biggest game of his great career. So who you got tonight?
I do like Phoenix. I just think that there's just a game that we haven't seen yet here in the last couple offensively that they're going to be able to put together. And I think it's going to be tonight. And I think it does start with Chris Paul. He has it in him. He's been able to get to spots, but he just hasn't been able to make shots. I think you're going to see a different mindset out of him. And for whatever reason, you take a look at what's going on, Kevin, in the postseason. Home teams have had a very difficult time dealing with the pressure of playing at home. It's been very strange. Normally, you think home court in the playoffs, that's everything. It's been tough for these teams, and I think Phoenix takes advantage of that, and I think Phoenix plays very well tonight offensively, and they end this series.
Okay, and if the Clippers extend the series, my goodness, Game 7 and all the pressure going back to Phoenix and the Suns. We'll see Legs later on tonight on SVP. Thank you, Legs.
Is out. And Giannis is grabbing toward his left knee area.
Oh my, the Eastern Conference Finals may see a gigantic turning point here.
We got to do the little things. We got to turn their pressure against them.
Keeping that pressure on these guys for 48 minutes.
Here's Williams for 3. Floats it to the rim, turns and flushes.
We just need to settle in a little bit.
Open 3. That's good! It's a 20-point Atlanta lead. Oh my, it's Atlanta's night.
It was one of those nights. Somebody played with confidence.
We were super confident, man. That's what it's all about.
The Hawks blew out the Bucks in Game 4 last night to even the series, doing so without their star Trae Young. Meanwhile, the Bucks may have suffered a bigger loss last night as Giannis Antetokounmpo hobbled off the court with an injured left knee in the third quarter. For more on the two-time MVP status, here's Malika Andrews.
Stephen A., as Adrian Wojnarowski and Zach Lowe reported earlier today, the MRI and imaging on Giannis Antetokounmpo's hyperextended left knee did not show any structural damage. But still, as they reported, there is no timetable for his return. But Mike Budenholzer, the coach of the Bucks, said that this was the best possible news, encouraging news that they could have received given how scary it was in the moment when Giannis went down. Now, he's officially listed as doubtful for Game 5. He hasn't been ruled out yet, but if he is unable to play, look at Bobby Portis as someone they could potentially lean on a little bit more and maybe even start, given the energy and offensive production he has given the Bucks in this series against the Hawks. Again, Giannis has not yet been officially ruled out, but given the swelling in his knee, I'm hearing it would be a little bit surprising to see him out on the court on Thursday. And for more on the Hawks injuries, here's Tim Bontemps.
Thanks, Malika. As the Hawks continue to prepare for Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals here in Milwaukee, the status of superstar guard Trae Young remains uncertain. Young, who missed Atlanta's Game 4 victory with a bone bruise in his right foot and a sprained right ankle, remains questionable for Game 5. Young made the trip to Milwaukee with his teammates and will continue to receive treatment. Hawks coach Nate McMillan said he once again expects Young to be a game-time decision Thursday night. Back to you, Stephen A.
When Chris Middleton has been on the court without Giannis, it spelled trouble for Milwaukee in these playoffs. ESPN's Basketball Power Index gives the Bucks just a 23% chance to win the title if Giannis were to miss the rest of the playoffs. Will Bond and Perk back in the house with yours truly. Depending on the severity, what impact could Giannis' injury have on the rest of this series, Will Bond?
I don't believe Milwaukee can win this series without Giannis being on the court. And I understand how good Middleton and Drew Holiday and Lopez and that cast, that ensemble is. Stephen A., he's a two-time MVP. And they struggle anyway. You know, I've been saying to you every night, we're sitting there watching these games, whether we're watching the Eastern Conference on television and texting each other, talking to each other, what do I tell you? I don't trust Milwaukee. I don't trust them with Giannis. So if Giannis is the best player in this series, and he is, with all due respect to Trae Young coming, why would you expect Milwaukee to win without Giannis?
Stay right there, because I'm coming right back to you with a follow-up to that. But Perk, do you agree or disagree with Wilbon on this?
I disagree, and here's why. Because of home court advantage, all right? And the Milwaukee Bucks have the home court advantage. And we all know role players play better at home. And listen, $177 million, $160 million. God damn it, they better get it done. That's Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. They getting paid the big bucks, okay? They have a big three, okay? One of their big three is out. The other two need to step up. And listen, Brook Lopez, I've witnessed him when Giannis has been out. He's been able to give them 20 and 10. Mike Budenholzer is going to have to switch up his offensive game plan and go through Lopez on the low post. I feel like Bobby Portis could give more. I feel like the experience with P.J. Tucker is going to overshadow the youth of the Atlanta Hawks, especially having the home court advantage.
Kendrick Perkins and Wilbon, I'll go to you first with this question. If the Clippers can win without Kawhi Leonard.
No, you know this doesn't work that way. I knew you were going there.
Why can't Milwaukee win without Giannis?
I'm going to ask you a question. So you ask me a question, I'm going to ask you one.
Sure.
You going to make the case to me that the Milwaukee Bucks are as tough physically and as tough-minded as the L.A. Clippers?
No, I will not make that case with you.
There's your answer.
But I will say this. Trae Young is not 100%.
Right.
And I do agree with Perk, with Middleton, even though he's missed the roller coaster in my eyes. 39 one game, 13 the next, 38 the next, or whatever. They're just roller coasters. Still in a home court advantage with those two. And the team as constructed, I do think Milwaukee should be favored to win this series with or without Giannis.
Y'all can talk about should, and by the way, Perk should be flown in if you're Milwaukee, if you're the Bucks. Perk should be flown in to give that assessment that he just gave to their locker room.
Right.
Because Perk could push the buttons that bench is not able to push so far to get them to play that way consistently. I remember being at the Toronto series a couple of years ago. We're talking about the guts of the team. We were there.
I was there with you.
Stephen A., that team is missing something. I'm not entirely certain of what it is. And if they were entirely certain, they would have fixed it. I still don't trust Milwaukee to rally the way you both think. We all three of us think they should. I'm talking about what I see at this point. Atlanta has a belief in itself. The Hawks players do, and that staff. They have a belief in their staff that, to me, pushes them above the level we think they should be playing as a
I
neophyte
agree with
team.
all of that, but I didn't see that when Middleton was smoking them in game
But
3.
he's not
I didn't
smoking
see it
every
then.
game, Stephen A.
I understand that.
He ain't that kind of star.
All he got to do is do it 2 of the 3. Do it to game 5, mess up in game 6 like you usually do, and then do it again in game 7. That's not plausible. I think he could do that.
That's cold.
It's true.
It is true, but my point is we can't count on this game after game from that ensemble.
Right. Understood.
I got to see it. It's been 2 years in a row that they didn't do it. Now I'm going to give them a third chance to presume that they're going to get this right.
Well, listen, by the way, when you say it's cold, ain't nothing wrong with me doing something cold when it comes to Milwaukee. It's cold there anyway. That's why they got a petition out not wanting me to come to town because they mad I pointed out the cold weather in that city. Damn it, it's cold in Milwaukee, period. But that's the way it goes. Still ahead with Paul George and the Clippers refusing to go quietly in these playoffs. What's been the biggest difference maker since LA's major collapse in the bubble? Plus, we'll tell you the key factors for Chris Paul and the Suns to close out the series and advance to the NBA Finals tonight. Who improved to 10-2 when facing elimination as a head coach, the best record by a coach in NBA history. He's also seeking to win his 5th series after being down 2-0. No other head coach has more than 2. We now welcome in ESPN senior NBA writer, the one and only Mark Spears. Mark, Ty Lue is no stranger to coaching a team back after being down 3-1. What's the difference, though, between today's Clippers and a team that collapsed in the bubble?
Man, Steve, I was in the bubble, man. That was one of the saddest things I've ever seen from a team. They didn't want to be there. I mean, if you remember, they voted to get out of the bubble along with the Lakers when they had that stop and play because of Jacob Blake, and their family was cheering harder for them than they were for their own selves. Now, this team is a fighter, and you see that guy right there. He's certainly proven that he's a fighter. And with the Cavaliers 5 years ago, he helped them get from a 3-1 deficit to ending up with LeBron James and Kyrie winning it. And as you mentioned, his record. But I think the thing that Ty Lue is doing right now that is smart and special with this team is he told them after they got down in this series to take every quarter one at a time. Don't try to win it all at one time. And right now, they look great doing that. They won 3 out of 4 quarters last game.
Mark, I'm literally on the record. I love the fact that he didn't end up in Brooklyn because if he was winning, they would have said Kyrie and KD. I love the fact that he didn't end up with the Lakers because they would have said LeBron. Him being here, he's now getting the credit he so richly deserves. Congrats to Coach Ty Lue.
Yes, sir.
But he still has a series to win. Now let me transition. Part of why we are here at Game 5 is the performance from Clippers center Boogie Cousins, or rather Game 6. His performance in Game 5. I'm talking about Boogie Cousins right now on Monday night that kept the Clippers alive. You wrote about Cousins this week for The Undefeated. Why do you think he's been so successful off the bench this year for LA?
Hey, man, and Steve, he needs to hear you say that, right? He needs to hear you say that. Because one thing that Boogie has thrived on is what he believes is his haters and the narrative. You know, this is a guy who could have been a max player, and because of Achilles tendon injury and a knee injury, he's lost a lot of money. And he said once a day he literally thinks about should he still be playing. He said that nobody believes in him, but he also has a confidence that when he goes into the game, he's the best player on the floor. He's like, hey, I could roll out of my bed and still play basketball. And I mentioned about Sarge guarding him, and he felt offended. And also, the one thing that I know you'll love, he said that winning a title will be his ultimate redemption. And if he gets that ring, Steven, he has a place on his middle finger for everybody to see.
We all know that ain't nobody question the game of DeMarcus Cousins. We all know Boogie Cousins can ball. It's his attitude we've questioned, not his game. Anyway, I got some news to report, and I wanted to go to you about this. Ivica Zubac is out for Game 6 with a sprained right MCL for the Clippers. Your thoughts about that and the impact that'll have on tonight's game?
Yeah, well, you know, we'll see Morris Sr. I'm expecting back in the starting lineup. He's given them some offensive punch. Boogie Cousins, he's going to have to give him that same offensive punch too. Now he knows that he's going to play. And, you know, the Clippers, they know and they have told their guys it can't be just Paul. It has to be others. And when you see Reggie and Morris and Cousins, they are getting others to contribute to their wins.
Mark Spears, always appreciate you, my man. Thanks so much, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Mike Wilbon, Big Perk back with us. Let's go back to Ty Lue. I was quoted the other day saying that right now he looks like the best coach in the NBA. considering the job that he's been doing in these playoffs, and we already know he's a champion as a head coach, and he was the champion of the Cavs team. He was the coach of the Cavs team that came back from a 3-1 deficit and knocked off Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and those boys. How should we view Ty Lue right now?
He's one of the best coaches in the league. I mean, let's go back to the Cleveland time, where he goes in there in a situation where, we don't know what we're necessarily going to see. Ty Lue is a proven commodity in terms of assistant, but he had to deal with LeBron. I'm sure that partnership was not without its rocky moments, Stephen A. LeBron is a headstrong character. We know that, right?
Yeah.
So is T. Lue. A guy who, for every playground and gymnasium he walked into his whole life, somebody was going to make their name off punking Ty Lue, except they never did.
Right.
And so that same strength carries into the NBA on the bench as a coach. And those guys understand how tough he is. He don't need to be flexing. Ty Lue's not about that. But he's the inner toughness that he exhibits. Those guys are all ready to play all the time. Look at the other night. Marcus Morris Sr. Look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Terrence Mann and his development late in the season.
Yeah.
You have to look at coaches and what happens in practice in that laboratory, what those meetings are like one-on-one, for those guys to be ready to play and play well. That's T. Lue.
That's T. Lue. That's
No
Chauncey
question.
Billups.
Chauncey
Dante
Billups, his
Jones.
staff.
That's right.
The whole staff.
The whole staff. Perk, your thoughts on Ty Lue?
Well, you know how I feel about Ty Lue. He's the best in the game, and you could see it through Reggie Jackson and Paul George. Just think about those two guys in particular and where they were last year to where they at right now. We can arguably say that they one of the top duos in the playoffs or in the NBA the way that they're playing. And one thing you have to notice about Ty Lue, his adjustments in the series. You know why Devin Booker is in foul trouble? Because Ty Lue is picking on him like he did with Steph Curry when he was down 3-1. I'm going to make you guard so you don't have that much energy on the offensive end. I'm going to make you defend to spend some of that energy on the defensive end and get you in foul trouble and frustrate you because I got Patrick Beverly in your back pocket.
He is one of the best, if not the best in the game right now. The thing that we measure coaches on, he's delivered. He delivers on. All of them. All of them. Ty Lue, way to go. We'll continue. As Paul George continues to carry the Clippers in Kawhi's absence, we'll examine what's right or wrong about past criticism surrounding PG-13. Plus, Paul George has put in a lot of mileage in these playoffs. He's played 735 minutes, which is 130 more than the next closest player in Devin Booker. His usage rate has also increased by 21% since Kawhi Leonard went down with that sprained right knee. Earlier this week, PG-13's teammate DeMarcus Cousins had this to say about the criticism PG-13 receives.
I don't know where this trolling bullshit has come from, whereas the internet controls the narrative about these players. It's becoming foolish, man. Like I said earlier in the year, that's one of the most special players to ever lace his shoes up. Get this dude his flowers, man. I don't understand the slander. It's becoming quite silly now. Like, respect these players, man. Respect these greats.
Perk and Wilbon back with us. Respect these players. Respect these players. I mean, can somebody tell me what the hell DeMarcus Cousins is talking about? Can we start with you, Wilbon?
Yeah, well, we already know because he says that about himself. That people, the narrative and the haters, the whole theme is tiresome to me. We know what the culture is about, and it's been this way for decades. You win, the flowers are delivered.
That's right.
You don't, they're going to be critics. First of all, why are they paying so much attention to whoever the haters are? What are you doing?
Right.
Why are you paying attention to it all the time? Turn Instagram off and pay attention to something else, and you won't have to worry about the haters. So that whole thing is tiresome. Paul George did this to himself, I know unintentionally, and it shouldn't be that big a deal. It is to some people. It's not to me. The whole Playoff Pete nickname. When you haven't had a bunch of great playoffs, you can't be called an all-time great. That's just the way that works in any profession, and particularly in sports and entertainment. He did that. It has backfired to some degree. I said the other night, Paul George has been the best player in this series. Even with the 2 missed free throws, he's been the best player. DeAndre Ayton had pretty good games all the way along, too. But this is something Paul George decided to live with when he gave himself that nickname, Stephen A.
Right. Perk, your thoughts?
I mean, I'm just sitting up here and it's mind-boggling to me. if they gonna do all the crying, what the babies in the world are gonna do? I'm just asking. For the simple fact, I grew up with old school Rough Riders. I was raised by Gary Payton, Walter McCarty, Eric Williams, Kevin Garnett. They embraced the haterism. Look, at the end of the day, this is what you signed up for. The fortune and the fame. It comes with the good and the bad. You get paid millions of dollars. Who cares? At the end of the day, go out there and do your job. I said this before, Stephen A. and Mike Wilborn. KG used to tell me all the time, just like you have a good game and you want to go click on the television, you want to go see what Mike Wilborn and Stephen A. go say about you. When you have a bad game, go listen to it as well. And you use that as fuel to go out there and deliver and up your game and play even better.
Right.
I just don't understand it. I was sleeping good at night. AC on 60 and fan blowing in my face.
That's right. Perk, I got to tell you, KG once told me the same thing. I mean, he told me you're absolutely right on the money about that. And this is the thing that drives me crazy, and this is where I'll veer a little left from the both of y'all. What's their definition of hate? Can somebody look that up for me?
Anything that's not
last time I checked,
praise.
when Paul George, first of all, we know that he's a high character guy, one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. He's really a great guy, and he can ball. No one has ever called him a scrub. He's gotten paid. Nobody disputed that he deserved the money that he got paid. All we said was that when he played great, but if you miss 2 free throws with 8.2 seconds left, for only the second time this season, and you just show up in a game 7 last year, somebody's going to call you out from it. And in terms of Boogie Cousins, nobody's ever said he couldn't play. What they talked about was his attitude. This is the guy that had a contract offered to him, an exorbitant contract by the Sacramento Kings. He ultimately turned that down. You know, you had the owner use the Shaquille O'Neal to try and counsel and tutor him or whatever. He didn't want to listen. Worldwide West, he didn't want to listen. You go to New Orleans, you're being a bit truculent, you're being a bit acerbic and rude and all of that other stuff. Doesn't exactly make you promotable or marketable. All of those things might have something to do with the hate that you receive because people reported that kind of stuff. All right? I remember in Sacramento one time he went at a reporter, okay, that was about half his height and God knows half the size and double his age, if not triple. So when you talk about hate, what are you talking about? In the end, all I'm saying is I don't get where they're coming from with all of that.
Stephen A., we're talking about 2 generations of people, not just athletes or ball players, who think that any criticism is unwarranted no matter what. I had a coach tell me, a Hall of Fame coach said to me, coaching is now criticism to an entire generation. And coaches have to do their jobs differently, mindful that something's going to be called hate. So this is not unique to Boogie Cousins and Paul George.
Perk, I'll give you the last word real quick. Go ahead.
Stephen A. and Mike Wilborn, do y'all remember this? Okay, see, and it's no fun when the rabbit got the gun. You remember last year in the bubble when Dame Dollar and the Portland Trail Blazers were playing against the Clippers, and Dame Dollar went to the free throw line and missed both of the free throws, and the Clippers were over there mocking him and making fun of him and all that. Paul George was part of that, okay? It was all fine and dandy when you were criticizing Dame Dollar, but when the shooter's on the other foot, you can't take it. Dame Dollar bounced back, and he gave us a historical performance down there in the bubble.
It's a great point, but what I will say is this. That wasn't Paul George complaining. That was DeMarcus Cousins complaining.
That's right.
That was Paul George.
Fair.
That was different. Paul George wasn't the one complaining. That was DeMarcus Cousins complaining. What nerve. What nerve. I'll leave it at that. Still ahead, I'm calling out the must-see moments from around the basketball world. Find out who lands on tonight's edition of Oh, No, You Didn't. No, you didn't. Here's
part to the performance of Paul George.
George three-pointer, puts it in. Paul George exploding here in the 3rd period.
Playoff P came up huge in Game 5 against Phoenix, scoring 41 and keeping LA's season alive. He was particularly aggressive, scoring 20 points in the paint alone, tied for his most in any game in his playoff career.
George drives past Craig, goes inside, lays it up and in.
George became just the 2nd player with 40 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 75% shooting in a playoff game, joining Patrick Ewing in 1990 versus the Celtics. Free throw struggles aside, George has done it all, scoring 20-plus points in all 18 games this postseason. Fortunately for the Clippers, he's also gotten a lift from Reggie Jackson in Leonard's absence.
Jackson long three, puts it in!
That shot making is obscene.
Here's a stat nobody saw coming. Reggie Jackson leads all postseason shooters with 56 made threes, and he's shooting a red-hot 42% from downtown. If the Clippers want to force a Game 7 and add to Tyronn Lue's stellar record in elimination games, they will once again have to rely on massive contributions from both George and Jackson. Otherwise, playoff P may become off-season P on Wednesday night.
Mark Jackson will be on a call for the Suns Clippers and joins us now live from inside the Staples Center. Good to see you, my man. When it comes to the Suns, what must they do tonight to end this series, Mark?
Well, great seeing you. They've got to make plays on the offensive end, and it starts with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. They've struggled at times. Patrick Beverley has disrupted Devin Booker to a certain extent, frustrated him at times. And Chris Paul, if you ask Chris Paul, how would you ideally be defended with your offensive arsenal? He would probably say the way that the Los Angeles Clippers are defending me. He's missing mid-range jump shots. I never thought I'd say that. At a high clip, Chris Paul is missing mid-range jump shots. He's got to step up, be aggressive as a scorer, as a facilitator, and make them pay the price for daring him to hit those shots that he's hit his entire life at a high clip.
Mark, let me transition to this next guy who's been playing lights out as far as I'm concerned. He's only making $2.3 million this year in the last year of his contract. That's minimum wage in the NBA, for crying out loud. Actually, less than that. How impressed have you been with Reggie Jackson, who's doing all of this in his contract year?
I'm extremely impressed. And we're talking about a guy that admittedly considered retirement. He thought it was over for him. And when the lights got the brightest, he has played his best basketball with extreme confidence, taking the pressure off of Paul George. Even when Paul George hasn't been his best, Reggie Jackson has been absolute stellar, aggressively making shots, making plays, attacking the rim, and just being cool, calm, and collective. And a lot of that credit goes to Ty Lue, coaching him the way that he wants to be coached. And he's answering the bell with the plays that he's making night in and night out.
Mark Jackson, my brother from Queens, New York. Always good to see you, my man. See you tonight on the call. All right, take it easy. Wilbon, back to you. Let's go to CP3 for a second here because, listen, we know how great he is, but we've seen him in this series, and we have to acknowledge that the Suns seem to be moving at a slower pace with him in the game than they did with Cameron Payne, which seems to be working to the Clippers' advantage. What have you seen lately with CP3 running this offense?
The same thing Mark Jackson mentioned. And it's not running the up. Listen, they're getting open shots. How many times were you and I screaming at each other over that den of noise in Phoenix? They are getting the shots they want, including Chris Paul getting the shots he wants. When Mark Jackson talked about him missing those mid-range shots, that's the game that Chris Paul has that he uses to take advantage of so many others who want to see people either go to the basket entirely or stay outside the arc. He doesn't do that. And it's worked. Just look at the results. Look at the results last year in Oklahoma City. Look at the results all season, including the playoffs in Phoenix. Now, he went out. He missed those 2 games. Since he's come back, the Clippers seem to be defending him differently, but he is getting, to me, Stephen A., the shots he wants and is not making a high percentage.
It's that simple with Mike Wilbon Perk as it pertains to CP3. What about you? What are you seeing when he's in the game running the Suns offense?
Well, what I see is their pace have went down. Think about it. The first 2 series, the Phoenix Suns were up there far as with the best of them in their offensive pace. And what's happening now is that they're taking the ball out of bounds every time down. They're not getting stops. So you can't, if you're not getting stops, it's no pace because you can't get out and run. The Clippers are scoring every time down. If you look at Game 5, Marcus Morris went to work on them. I mean, what the Clippers shot over 48% from the field, they was making more than half of their buckets. You can't get out and run and get out and transition like that. Also, what is Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns also great at doing? Getting deflections, getting steals. Where the hell is Jay Crowder? We haven't seen him. He's on the back of a milk carton right now. Somebody find him. File a missing person report. We got to find him as well. He was the X factor in the Denver series defensively. He's not doing nothing in this series. Well, they got to get out in transition, and they got to get stops to get the pace going.
all I got to say to you is, oh, no, you didn't talk about Jamie Crowder like that. Oh, no, you didn't, but you did. Y'all know what time it is. Let's go to it. Let's go to the videotape right now, Wilbon. Big perk. Number 5 on the list, DeAndre Ayton. Check out the underhanded granny shot. I don't know if it's Rick Barry or grandfather, but look at the shot from the Bahamian. He made the shot. It looked good. It looked good. I will say he looked better than better than he did in Game 5, but I'm not gonna fault him for that. Oh no, you didn't hit that shot in warm-up, but only shoot 9 shots in the game. Oh no, you didn't on DeAndre Ayton, but you did. Let's go to number 4 on the list, please. Let's roll that tape. Look at this right here. R.J. Barrett crosses over, then makes a step back. Okay, this is Barrett, a member of the New York Knicks, playing as a team member of Team Canada because he's a Canadian. He led them in scoring with 23 points in their win over Greece. Here's all I have to say. Oh no, you didn't make that jump shot that you never made in the first round series against the Atlanta Hawks. Oh no, you didn't.
I knew it was.
Until then to make the damn jump shot. I wish I would have seen that against the Hawks, R.J. Barrett. I still love you though, and I still believe in you. Let's go to number 3 on the list, please. Clint Capella. Look at this shot over the backboard. It looked very Jordan-esque, Wilbon. Look at that shot right there. All over the board. Jordan. Bird. Oh no, you didn't. He's trying to act like you Larry Bird or Michael Jordan. Clint Capella. Oh no, you didn't. But he did. Look at that right there. Over Brook Lopez. I'm so surprised.
7-footer and the glass.
Let's go to number 2 on the list, please. Roll the tape. Giannis. Clint Capella tries to go to the rim with fervor, thinking he gonna dunk on somebody. Giannis said, get that out of here. Oh no, you didn't try to dunk on me. Oh no, you didn't. What nerve, what gall, the temerity, the unmitigated gall for you to do such a thing like that. Who do you think you are? Don't you know who I am? You better now. Giannis Antetokounmpo had something to say about this. Now look at this last one right here. Number 1 on the list, ladies and gentlemen. Paul George. Look at the move he puts on CP3. Didn't look like a push-off like Jordan did with Byron Russell. Didn't look like, but look, ooh, that was nasty right there. And a slight pause and a pull-up. Oh, no, you didn't. Do that right to CP3 like that. Oh, no, you didn't. But you did.
Oh, yes, he did.
Oh, yes, he did. Oh, yes, he did. Still ahead. Don't miss it. Don't miss tonight's Game 6 predictions. You know we've got a few of those. Will Chris Paul send the Suns into the app? Look at Clipperdale right there, jamming. Now I think it's safe to say, you know, he don't need to go and dance with the stars. I don't think he needs to do that. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, he looks like Cedric the Entertainer until he starts dancing. But that suit is that suit. That is Clipper love right there.
You're not old enough to remember a Soul Train line. He could be in that.
Actually,
you
I am.
Perk are too young to remember that.
Don Cornelius?
Yes, sir.
I do remember that.
Soul Train line. He might be able to get himself
I do remember that. I was reminded because sometimes I actually rocked the bell-bottom pants in the 80s. What can I say? What can I say? Listen, let's go to this Game 6 tonight, right? The key player in this game for the Clippers, Wilbon, is who?
Paul George. I mean, we can start searching for these things, trying to find some mystery if we want. If Paul George plays like he did in Game 5, chances are overwhelming that the Clippers will win. The Suns have to stop that.
What about Reggie Jackson?
Yes, in a Robin role. In the Batman role is Paul George.
All right. What about you, Perk?
For the Clippers, I'm going with Paul George. I mean, if he stays in his bag and he keeps that confidence up the way he's going, no one on the Phoenix Suns could stop him.
What about the Phoenix Suns? Because I'm thinking about Booker. I'm thinking about CP3, Perk. But I'm also thinking about DeAndre Ayton and how he has to have the ball. I don't think you win this game if you don't get DeAndre Ayton the ball. Who's the key player for the Phoenix Suns tonight in Game 6, Perk?
You know what? I'm going with Jay Crowder. I've been giving him a lot of heat. I think he's going to be the difference maker. I think CP3, Devin Booker, and Ayton, they're going to do what they do best, but I think Jay Crowder is going to be the difference maker tonight. I think he's going to rise to the occasion.
Wilbon, your thoughts?
I'm going to split it. Crowder and Bridges. If you look in the Lakers series, if you look in the Denver series, those guys delivered some dagger shots. I don't mean late in the game necessarily, early in the game to build the lead. Tonight's going to be a front-runner situation, just like the last 3 games. If anybody gets control of this game early, the chances are they're going to keep it. But Crowder and Bridges have got to hit some of the open shots. Those open shots have been produced by CP3, by the way, largely. They're getting shots and not hitting them.
Are you ready for this, y'all? Are both of y'all sitting down for this one? The key player for the Phoenix Suns to me, other than getting DeAndre Ayton the ball, of course, is Cameron Johnson.
That man needs to have the ball more. This brother is shooting better than 50% from the field, better than 57% from the field. I mean, better than 50% from three-point range as well. This dude, when he has the ball in his hands, he's making shots. And if you're struggling to make shots, you need to get the ball to somebody who ain't struggling. So let's go to the prediction. Who you got? Clippers, Suns, Game 6, Mike Wilbon. Give it to me.
You know, from the beginning, I thought this series was destined to go 7 games. I'm going to stick with that. And to get 7 games, the Clippers are going to have to defend home court tonight.
So you're picking the Clippers?
Picking the Clippers.
Perk, who you got?
I picked the Suns in 6, and I'm rolling with the Suns in 6. I feel like they're going to come out and have a complete game. Finally, on the offensive end, they're going to make shots, and they're going to close this out on the road, led by Chris Paul.
Well, you were right about Game 5, if I remember correctly. Wilbon and I were wrong. Well, damn it, we taking our chances. We've been right a couple of games this series. We're taking our chances again. I'm rolling with the Clippers tonight to force a Game 7, fellas. I think Paul George is going to answer the call. I think Boogie Cousins is going to answer the call. I think Reggie Jackson is going to answer the call. And more importantly, I think Patrick Beverley and Terrence Mann are going to continue to be the pest that they have been. That's where I'm at with it. Any problem with that, guys?
That's the ensemble.
Stephen A. Mike Wilborn.
Go ahead, Perk.
Stephen A. Mike Wilborn. Let me tell y'all something. Guess what? Right. I feel sorry for y'all loss.
Really? See, he said that, right? He said it, right? You know, here's the funny part about Perk, right? So if Perk is wrong tonight, you know what he's going to say to us? Carry on. Carry on. That's what he's going to say. He's going to say carry on. That's all he's going to say. And then disappear, all right? Okay, we getting on out of here. That's it for this Sports Center with yours truly. Game 6, Clippers, Suns, next. That's it for Sports Center. Countdown is next.
Hello and welcome back to NBA Countdown. Just like that, we're back in Staples Center because the comeback Clips, they got a lot of comeback in them. They've been down 0-2 3 times so far this playoffs, and yet they continue to force Game 6s, and we are waiting to see if they can force a Game 7. Maria Taylor alongside Adrian Wojnarowski. Me and Jalen Rose look like we're going to prom.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
Got our matching colors.
Let's get it.
And you know what, Jay? Well, I'm not hating on you because you said the Clippers were going to win Game 5.
Oh, I get love.
So you get a little
I get love today. I needed that. I needed that, MT.
Okay, so that's the reason why we're here back in Staples Center, but obviously we keep our eyes on the Eastern Conference Finals as well. The Hawks obviously tying up that series 2-2, but all eyes were on the Bucks when Giannis Antetokounmpo went out. About 7 minutes left in the third quarter. Woj, we saw he hyperextended that knee, but what is the latest and what are you hearing about the two-time MVP?
Well, Giannis Antetokounmpo had an MRI, had imaging back in Milwaukee today. And it was about the best possible news that the Bucks could expect or hope for. No structural damage to that left knee, no ligament damage. And so right now the question remains, how soon can Giannis Antetokounmpo get back into this series, if at all? It is unlikely he's back for Game 5 tomorrow, but this is a player who has shown a tremendous capacity to come back quickly from injury. And again, this is a player last night when Giannis suffered that injury, he came back out wanting to check into the game. The Bucks weren't going to let him do that, but that's certainly his mentality, and obviously he wants to get back for a chance here. He's 2 wins away from the NBA Finals.
Yeah, listen, the entire NBA world was watching that game, and seeing Giannis go down was obviously hard. Prayers go out to him and hopefully a fast recovery. But now Malika Andrews has traveled to Milwaukee, and she has the latest on the Bucks. Let's check in.
Maria, as Woj noted, Giannis Antetokounmpo has not officially been ruled out of Game 5 on Thursday, but given the swelling in his knee, I'm hearing that it would be a little bit surprising to see him out on the floor. But given how scary it was to watch him go down in the moment, Mike Budenholzer said that this was the best possible news that the Bucks could have gotten. And if Giannis is unable to go, look for a player like Bobby Portis to step up and even start potentially to give them a little bit more offensive production like he's been doing all series long, and also some energy and spark. He's been playing incredibly well here in Pfizer Forum against the Atlanta Hawks. And speaking of the Hawks, Trae Young is officially listed as questionable for Game 5 with that right foot injury. This continues to be about mobility and pain tolerance. So he is here in Milwaukee and continues to get treatment in the hopes that he's going to be able to return at some point in this series. Back to you in LA.
All right, appreciate it, Malika. Now listen, the Bucks, they've been rolling so far this postseason when Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis are all on the floor. They've been outscoring their opponents by over 12 points per 100 possessions. However, when Giannis is off the court, their defensive rating increases by 13 points. And obviously, thankful that Giannis has no structural damage, and that's good news coming there. But let's go to the Hawks side because, again, as Malika reported, Trae Young was out. We don't know if we're going to see him in the next game, but they still managed to lead the entire game. Giannis was in when the Hawks were up. They jumped out to a 15-5 lead, and although when he went out, they outscored the Bucks 25-10, but they were kind of in control of this one, Jalen.
You heard her be professional and from Atlanta. Well, the Hawks was winning when Giannis went out. You heard that, right?
I'm trying to be respectful.
So much so that they held Giannis to 0 points in the first quarter, held the Bucks to only 16 points in the second quarter, and how about Lou Willville and Bogey outscored Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton?
Yeah.
If that's going to happen and you're Atlanta, you get the victory. Nate McMillan did a terrific job making sure this team was prepared to play without Trae Young. Even Cam Reddish came in, gave him some quality defense, quality minutes. These Atlanta Hawks look confident.
I never thought I would say this. The Atlanta Hawks can win a world championship.
Say it again.
The Atlanta Hawks can win a world championship. And we have to start, that is realistic.
Yes.
This team without Trae Young, even at that juncture, Cam Reddish coming off the bench defensively, the way he played in this ball game, the way Bogey knocked down threes. Look, Nate McMillan has done a phenomenal job, and it comes back to Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde for the Milwaukee Bucks. And P.J. Tucker came out and said it, hey, we just thought we were going to beat them because they didn't have Trae Young. That's something that you always worry about with the Bucks, that light switch off, light switch on mentality.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Nate McMillan and the impact he's had on this Hawks team. The knock on him, going back to his days coaching in Portland, in Indiana, 9 straight playoff losses coming into this postseason. Could he make adjustments as a head coach in the playoffs? And that conversation is over. He has shown himself to be an elite coach in this series, in these playoffs. And this is a head coach who now goes from interim status to perhaps you're looking at a 5-year big money deal to return as the Atlanta Hawks head coach next season.
Yeah, you're talking about a coach that had to deal with the Hawks team starting 14-20, jump in as the interim head coach. That happened on March 1st. Add in Lou Will. Remember, he showed up around the trade deadline at the end of March. So, you don't know what you have, and he's been able to make it work for sure. But if both of these teams are missing their stars, no Trae Young and no Giannis next game, who do you trust more? Which supporting staff do you trust more?
I just don't know what Bucks team I'm going to get. And there's been so much talk about, Chris Middleton being a superstar. I think Chris Middleton is a big-time player. And this is an opportunity for him in the playoffs. We've seen Kevin Durant do it. We've seen LeBron James have to do it. People criticize Jokic when he had no Jamal Murray. Now we're going to see a Bucks team without Giannis, and it's time for Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, part of that big three, the 2 out of 3, to step up in a big way.
Well, tonight the Bucks have the advantage. To me, going back home, their role players are going to play a lot better. A guy like Bobby Portis is going to play tough. He's going to get some buckets, and he's going to be confident playing in front of the home fans. They're going to need to get more out of Brook Lopez, who was a single-digit scorer in the previous game. I think you go deeper into the roster without Giannis, they're going to play with a sense of urgency in front of their home fans.
Bobby Portis has never started a playoff game in his career, but he's been playing good minutes for the Bucks too.
He has, and the Bucks, they brought in Bobby Portis because they felt like they had to have just some more versatility offensively in the postseason. That too often in recent years, it was all Giannis, all Chris Middleton, and they needed just some more varied offensive weapons. Bobby Portis has been outstanding for them this year. This is a player who started with the Bulls, started with the Knicks. He can take on a bigger role.
But also, without Trae Young, right, Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton can't be getting outscored by Lou Willville and Bogey.
Exactly.
That just can't happen no matter where they're playing if the Bucks plan on winning.
Right, and they allowed the Hawks to shoot 51% from the field. I mean, it comes down to defensively, too, draw a line in the sand.
Yeah, and we saw Drew Holiday struggle offensively when he was guarding Trae Young. And now if Trae Young doesn't play in Game 5, I think it opens up the floor a little more for Drew Holiday, who certainly, is capable of putting up, all-star level offensive numbers as well.
All right, well, we'll see whether or not Trae Young and Giannis will be able to go. Obviously, Clint Capella also dealing with some eye inflammation.
Over the backboard!
But can I also just say, the only championship the Hawks have won was in 1958. They were with St. Louis, and if they win one this year, I'm not going to be professional. I'm just going to be real honest about that, okay?
A-town down.
can gloat as much as you want.
There you go. But the Eastern Conference Finals Game 5 is coming your way tomorrow. Meanwhile, we are waiting for the Western Conference Finals Game 6 to start. Devin Booker still looking for one of those really big performances like we saw in Game 1. Maybe he'll have another one here in Game 6.
Speaking of big games, I know Lou was celebrating last night, doing some charity work, giving back to the community.
Oh, jeez.
And I love it so very much.
Oh, jeez.
This has to be a Devin Booker game. He got to get going, Jay Will, at some point. Got to get that straight jacket off of him.
Always got to get back to the community, Jay Rose.
And that's what it's all about. Coming up on NBA Countdown.